Hello and welcome to part 3 of our submarine tutorial set. When last I left you, we had gotten the eye area set up, the teeth inside the mouth set up. So now we're ready to start texturing. A couple things I want to do first. I'm going to go ahead and turn that lock camera off so I can actually see my scene a little better. Looks like I might need to bring this corner of his face down. Let's go back to solid view. Bring this whole guy in here. Little bit in, so it's actually touching the surface there, and maybe down here also. Okay, make sure that's set to smooth shading. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start adding these things to the body. Since we got the teeth in there, we can go ahead and apply that mirror modifier. So there we go. Let's go ahead and set that subdivisions to 2 just so it moves around just a tad quicker. And everything else, like the propellers, we can go ahead and select those first, shift select the submarine part afterwards, and hit Control J. That's going to merge those together. And then go ahead and do the same thing with the top, the eye area. Select that, Control J, and it merges that. So that's now all one piece. So the whole submarine item there is that one piece. We want to make sure we leave these two guys, the eyelids and the windshield, leave those separate. And actually, let's go back a little bit before we added that there, the top. Let's go ahead and apply that mirror on there. So now we can select the bottom, Control J. There we go. So it's all one piece now. Okay, so now we need to start adding the texture. So let's tab into edit mode, and let's start kind of slicing this guy up. I hit Control up arrow, by the way, to make that full screen, that one box. And let's add a loop here around the middle of our main area here, and hit Control E. We're going to mark the seam, and that just kind of cuts it in half. And I want to go ahead and add one around the lips as well, like so. Maybe that edge there, Control E. Mark a seam there. Alright, so moving on. Go ahead and cut the dome, or the torpedo shape for the propeller area. Go ahead and add in a loop there, mark a seam. And I guess while we're at it, we can go ahead and let's just add in a loop all the way around the middle of the propellers. So we can add loops to that, or add seams. Control E, mark seam. There we go. Control E, mark the seam. And I think on this edge, this tip here of the propellers, we can move that out. Let's get rid of that very inner vertex there, if you can grab it. Go ahead and delete that vertex, and that'll give us an opening there. So when we flatten out our UV texture, that won't, I mean, it'll flatten that out, and it won't just be a weird thing with no opening. So let's do the same thing here on our fins and rudders here. Gonna get rid of the guys that are gonna be never seen. We could have done this before we applied the mirror, but what do you do? Okay, just go ahead and delete those. Delete the faces, just the faces. And we can go ahead and add a loop, add an edge around there, and mark a seam there around each middle. So you can just select all of them at once if you like. There we go. Control E, mark those seams. And I think the body's good to go. Tell you what, let's go ahead and separate the nose, as it were, right there. Select that right there. Control E, mark that seam there. And then let's separate. Let's grab the top area here, the eye area. Just Control L. Just select one vertex. Control L. Select all the linked ones. And if we hit Shift H, it'll hide everything that's not selected there, and give us a little bit more freedom. Let's tab out of edit mode, and let's hide our eye area here, our eyeballs, so we can come back and see this a little easier. And now let's add a seam around the base of the walls, the bulkhead, and around the top area as well. Control E, go ahead and mark that seam, and then come inside to these edges here. Actually, edge select make things a little easier to select there. You should know it exactly selecting the edge rather than just the points on it. Go ahead and Control E, mark that seam as well. And I guess around the very top also. Just select that loop there, Control E, and mark that seam. Now we should be able to unwrap this with no problem. So I'm going to hit Alt H, Alt H, there we go, to unhide everything. And I'm going to go Control down to make that so it's not full screen anymore. And let's split this window. I click the little diagonal lines there. Just click and drag with your left mouse button. And we'll turn this one to the UV image editor. Maybe make that window a little bigger. And let's select everything here on our submarine and hit U. Make sure you're still in the window when you do it. U, unwrap. And looks like everything unwrapped pretty well. We can create a nice texture map from this. So let's do that. Yeah, before we do that, let's come over here. We'll go to Object Mode, Texture Paint, and we're going to add a paint slot for the diffuse color. And let's set that to 2048, not 204080, 2048. There we go. And I like to give it a color grid just so it's nice and pretty. And we'll say OK. You can see it maps that the new material over here. If we select that, there we go. Maps that onto there. So now we have a material for our submarine, and we just need to paint it. Okay, so let's go to our side view, and we'll go to our slots, or actually our tools there, and we want to texture draw. That's good. That's one we want. And let's make it kind of a soft gray color. It's going to be very metallic. Maybe a tiny bit of a purplish blue, maybe about like so, just a little bit of color there. Okay, and then come down to options, and let's turn off all of these guys here so we're painting completely across. If those are on, if you watched any of my other tutorials about texture painting, you know that if those are on and you paint like so, it's only going to paint what you see. It's not going to paint through there. But we want to paint the whole shebang, which I guess we could have taken care of that. Instead of doing the color grid, we could have just done this specific color, but it doesn't matter. We can do it now. We can fix that. So you turn all those off, and then you paint, and you can see it colors all the way through, which is exactly what we want. So we'll just paint all of this, all this one color, just to get it all the same color. And we can set the bleed up. And what the bleed does is if we zoom in here to the actual texture map that's being created, you can see in some areas it doesn't, since we have subsurf turned on over here, if we turn that off, you can see a little bit more. Like in some of the creases, we didn't get all that painted. So if we increase the bleed to say 8 or something like that, it should paint across all of those. You can see there it's not quite to the edge of that loop there. So if we turn the bleed up and then also turn the subsurf off, we can just paint over that all again. You can see it increase the border of that around there. Okay, so it's all the same color now, which, I mean, you could do that, but it's not going to look very nice, very realistic. So one thing we can do is go back to our colors and maybe darken this one up, maybe a little bit more colorful, a little darker, maybe a little more blue. About like so, maybe. About like so. Okay. So, you know, a real life submarine would probably just be colors of gray and steel, but since this is a cartoon, we can make it look whatever color we want. You can make it a yellow submarine if you want, and live in it. Live in a yellow submarine like the Beatles. So I'm going to make my brush a little smaller, and instead of painting on here where I might accidentally get off course, I'm just going to paint directly here on our texture map, only on the areas that I want it to be on. So I have to come over here, instead of view, click on there and say paint. So I want the nose to be this nice dark color, and then probably this border as well, which is probably, where is that? That's the top border around the top. So yeah, so I want that, the trim to be this darker purple color. There, just paint all that like so. And then let's take a look at my little reference here. Let's see. I want the trim to be the darker gray, the darker purple, and then I didn't give him the visor over his eyes, but that's okay. So also didn't add the cap on the back. Well, I guess I kind of did with the propeller thing, but in any case. And I didn't add any portholes. We might do that after a bit, but for now we'll just leave it alone. And then I think this guy as well. This is probably the back area there. Yeah. Okay. Let me make my brush a little bigger. Maybe it'll go a little faster then. And then we can fix whatever mess ups we accidentally do. Okay. And for that matter, we can just go ahead and paint it directly here, so we know exactly which ones we need to paint, which ones we don't. And then the tip of the propeller thing there. And then the nose on this side. And make a brush a little smaller. And then this guy here. Okay. So now we can come back over here, and we know exactly what we need to paint. So we'll just do it quickly. Paint over here like so. And most of the fins and rudders are already set for the most part. Just paint over there real loosely. And over here. And this guy. Okay, so that's everything that needs to be dark is now dark. Let's see, look at it here. Good. Zoom in here. Alright, looking nice and cartoonish. So now I want to clean that up, and I want everything that's supposed to be pale, I want it to be pale. So let's click on the color here, get the little eyedropper, and we'll select a place that's not been messed up at all, so maybe right there. And that'll give us the correct color. We can come back in here and clean that up with the correct color where it needs to go. Zoom in here real close so we can get right up to that edge. And let's set our curve of our brush here. Right now it's got a nice fall off on it. It's a nice soft curve, but I want it to be a lot sharper. So I'll just move this. This is basically the shape of your brush right now. You know, before it's kind of like this, which gives it the nice fall off curve, but I want it to be more harsh. So it gives it nice right up to the edge. I'll have to click 1,000 times to get it to fill in. Okay, and then this here, this one. So just clean this up. Doesn't matter if you get outside the lines, as long as you don't overlap one of the other areas of the UV map that needs to be the other color. You can go outside the lines. It's actually better if you do that way. You know, the bleed will help if the subsurface doesn't make it behave the way it needs to. Okay. Now you might be thinking, why do we need to add a texture map on there if it's all just going to be separate colors? We could just, you know, add materials of that color to it. Well, yeah, you can do that. The problem with that is it just makes it only that color. If you want to go in and add some rust or, you know, other things, like I want to add in some of the bolts and rivets there along some of the edges. You can't really do that with just a material. You have to have a texture map. So that's what we're doing now. Adding a texture map so we can add little detail stuff. Okay, almost done with the main texture. Good to go. Alright, so that should be pretty cleaned up now. Good to go. Okay, go ahead and set that subsurf back on so we can see a little better. Okay, so that's looking pretty nice. Don't really know what the inside of his mouth looks like. So, tell you what we can do. We can do like we did when we were sculpting on the teeth. Just add in a shape key to open his mouth. So add that in, and then that's the basis. So we got to add a first key. So we'll just say open mouth, and then we can tab into edit mode. Go back to solid view. Tab into edit mode, and let's select some of the vertices there on the bottom lip, and just kind of do like we did before. Make sure our proportional editing is turned on. Yes. So just kind of open his mouth. Open part of the top of his mouth. accidentally select one of the teeth vertices. I think I did, yeah. So just show off the teeth. Make sure you're getting the right vertices there on the lips. Okay, so maybe we'll go ahead and open his teeth up a little bit too, just so we can see what's going on there. Maybe move these top teeth up. Okay, so now if we run that value all the way up, you can see that's what the inside of his mouth's looking like. Not bad, huh? It's looking pretty nice. I'm proud. Okay, so now what we can do, just so we know which things to color, we can go to the options and go ahead and turn those guys back on. That way I can come in here with my tools and say, let's go to the white color, just pure white paint. Make my brush really small. Zoom in here. Boom. That needs to be white. Boom. That needs to be white. And let's go ahead. I was gonna... You can make the inside of his mouth kind of a dark purple color to kind of match the rest of his body, or you can just kind of give it the lifelike, more of a pinkish color. So let's kind of go kind of in between. Maybe just kind of a light purplish pinkish. So say the inside of his mouth needs to be this color. Okay. So now come back over here to our map. You can see this area needs to be the pink color. So let's make our brush a little bigger. And let's bring this in just like this. And it's going to have a harsh fall off here where the, as you can see out here where the lips meet, the outer side of the head. But we can clean that up again once we get it all set the way we want. Okay, so this all needs to be that pink color as well. Zoom in real close here so we can get right precisely. Oops, overlap just a bit. Make sure you stay outside of that dark blue area because you don't want any overlap. Okay. Okay, so that's the inside of his mouth. And let's go back to the white color. And looks like this is one of his sets of teeth. So let's go ahead and paint that white. Make sure we don't overlap on the pink. And make our brush a little smaller. Maybe not that small. There we go. And make this white as well. Okay. So now we should have our teeth as white and our tongue and inside of the mouth as the pink. Now what we need to do is come back in here and blend in the outer edge of the gray, purplish gray, to the pink inside of the mouth. So let's do this. We'll select that color that we need to transition and then set our curve back to the way it was, which is this first one here on the set. And we can just kind of click in here and just paint that back on. Since our occlude, cull, and normal are still turned on, it's not going to paint through and get on the inside of the mouth or the teeth or anything like that, so it'll stay out. I didn't realize this is kind of a sharky color, this purplish gray. So that kind of works pretty well with this submarine, I think. It's a nice sea life feel to it. Okay, so this is working okay, but it's not really as pretty as smooth as I'd like. So what I'm going to do, once I get this kind of cleaned up a little better, let's come inside the mouth here and kind of see where it's blending together. Let's blend that even further. Let's make our brush here that we're painting with a little bigger and set the strength down to say 0.5. And then we can come in here, maybe not bigger, but we can come in here and just kind of clean this up manually here in the texture itself. Problem with doing this is it's hard to get it exactly lined up across the two seams like this. So we'll have to go in there and fix that after we get this cleaned up a little better. Another thing you can do is instead of painting that with a lower strength, you can also do a soften and just go along the edge, and it'll kind of smear them together, so you can set that strength up a little higher. It's really hard to really tell a difference, but it's working. Works a little better if you use the smear, I found, rather than the soften. So we just drag that in, have a much more gradual transition between the two colors, like so. Okay, then we'll go back up here and do the same thing on the other side. Then we'll have to actually go in on the 3D version of the model and kind of clean that up the same way, because those aren't going to match up perfectly. Okay, so let's come back over here and see how that's doing. You can see inside there, if we hit the 5 button, we'll go to our perspective view, and you can see where those aren't lining up just right, but we can come back in here with our smudge tool and just smudge those over and clean that up nicely. Do the same thing up here. That was almost good as it was. Okay, so one thing we can do to make this inside the mouth look a tiny bit even better, if we see his tongue at all, is give it a little bit lighter spot on the top of his tongue. You know, the taste buds and things make it look a little lighter up there. So let's set our lens here back to 35, so it's more of a fisheye angle almost, and we see the top of that tongue a little better. So let's set the brush back to texture draw, set that all the way up to white, and then set the strength down to say 0.2, so it's really pale. So we can come in here, just kind of paint on top of his tongue like so. Kind of hard to maneuver around in such a tight area. So you can get that kind of the way you want it. And then we can come in over here and use our smear tool to kind of clean this up, make our brush a little smaller. Clean it up here on the texture itself. Okay. And if you want to go even further and actually add an image of a tongue on there, you could do that. But I think that would make it a little too realistic, and we don't want it too realistic as it's a cartoon. So I'll just leave it with these colors. Okay, so now we got our color set up, and let's do this. I'd like to take this into Photoshop so I can add the nice round rivets perfectly where they need to go. So what I want to do is go ahead and add a line in where I want the seam in the metal to be. So let's go back to our text draw and go down to options. Go ahead and turn these three guys off again. Go back to tools. Let's set our radius way down. Just want a really thin line, and then set that to kind of a gray color. And I want the line, if I go back to our reference here, such as it is, you can see it's kind of just along the top edge there. So I'll just run this along here to about like so. And that should have added on both sides, yes. So there we go. And we'll add the rivets and things on there. And then also we can go ahead and draw where we want the rivets on the top. So right there, and then some down here. And then go to our top view. And let's turn on the three guys again, because I don't want that to accidentally go through and right on the bottom. So we'll just kind of draw just a placeholder. Actually, that's not going exactly where I want. There we go. Okay. And then down here. Okay, so we'll get some rivets along there, around the top, and then through here. And then, you know, tell you what, let's put some around the edge of the nose area there. So let's just click and drag like so. And you can put as many as you want, because submarines, you know, have a lot of seams and a lot of rivets, so you can put pretty much your heart's desire. I'm going to go ahead and say smooth on here, because since we added the rudders and everything, we didn't ever set the smooth again, so there we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. One very important thing, if you just save your scene, it's only going to save your model. It's not going to save your texture. So if you want to keep your texture saved, you actually have to go Image, Save as Image, And we'll go ahead and call this one Submarine underscore texture map. And I like to make sure it's a JPEG and set to 100% quality. So I'll save that as the image. So now that's saved. So these are kind of two separate things. This is the image editor versus the 3D editor. When you're saving the main Blender scene, it saves your 3D editor. If you, like I said, if you want the image saved, you have to go save as image. And then anything you change on it after you've already saved it, you go image, save image. So, good to go. So now, let's jump over into Photoshop, which I have right here. Let me minimize this so it fits the window a little better. Go ahead and minimize our reference there. And let me find that Blender file there. Sort by name. It was Submarine. There we go. And Submarine texture map. So we'll just open that up. Actually, that opened up there. I need to drag and drop it into Photoshop. Get my toolbars and everything where they need to be. Okay. So, here we go. Let's try just adding a circle in here. Let's zoom in here to here. Just add a circle. Hold down Shift, click and drag, and we'll just add that in. And then let's add some shape styles to it, or layer styles. Add a drop shadow, but let's change the distance to 0. Set the size a little bigger, so it's kind of just, a shadow around it rather than being thrown by it. And then we can set bevel and emboss. Well, let's not do that because this is a 3D, going to be on a 3D model, and the light's not always going to be coming from the same direction. So what we can do is just add a gradient overlay and change it to radial, and then say reverse. So it's always going to be higher in the middle, no matter which. We set the opacity down a little bit. Okay, let's do a color overlay. Actually, undo that. Say OK. Set the default color of the shape there to this purplish color. So there we go. So if we select out here, you can see there's our little rivet. So if we just hold down Alt, we can click and drag, and just drag that along that line we created all the way down. One thing we can do to save time, every few of them that you get, we can just select them all and just duplicate them, and just move them up, and then just rotate it however it needs to go. And you notice the gradient is not following, but as soon as we say yes, that's where we want it to go, it'll repair itself. So good to go. Okay, just go ahead and just do this all the way down. And we'll just copy one more there. And maybe one more back to there. We'll leave that one as is. Okay, so now we've got all these guys set, and if we collapse them all over here, we can select them all individually, or all at the same time, I guess. Quite a few of them. Okay. All my. I don't like the windowed way Photoshop handles things in later versions. I prefer everything on the sides. Okay, so let's. I'm just gonna go ahead and merge those layers. I'm gonna hold down Alt and duplicate that over. And we'll just rotate this and fit it on the other half, about like so. Okay, and then we can go ahead and erase that line that's on there. Just choose the paintbrush, then hit the I button to get the eyedropper. Select that color. B as paintbrush. Just click and drag across that. Maybe make the brush a little bigger. It's kind of like texture painting there in Blender. You just click and paint. Click and paint. There we go. I'm going to get rid of that one as well. Okay, and maybe this guy and this guy. Okay, so that's along the sides. Now we need some along the top edge, which looks like what this is here. So let's select some of these, maybe scale them down a little bit smaller rivets there. Rivets. Scale that down. Now let's go ahead and go there. Then we can select what's hanging over there. Get rid of that. Select that, duplicate it, and then T. Let's make it negative 100% along that line. There we go. Duplicate that, rotate it along that line. Go ahead and delete that one. Put it in place. Move it over. Control T. Negative 100%. And that should be where it needs to go already. Good. And then we'll add some along the, oops, select it first, there we go. Along that top edge. Alright, so I'll just add a couple more just to fit that in. And then delete what's left over. There we go. Looks like that might need to be rotated around. There we go. And that probably two. I guess it doesn't matter. There's only two of them. Didn't have to rotate it. Just move it more where it needs to go. Okay, so now I can merge that down with the next one. So it's all one piece. Move this up, and let's rotate that outwards, like so. Duplicate that, and rotate that negative 100. Down around, get that lined up. Like so. And then finally along the top front. Just go right here. Just mess with these here. And delete that. My finger's still wanting to push Blender shortcuts, and Photoshop doesn't like that. Okay, so we'll get that lined up. Okay, so that should be all the rivets on the gray part. Now on the nose, is that this area here? Yeah, we probably need some on that as well. I'm just going to start fresh on that one. Just select one of the originals. And I guess Control C, I guess I actually have to have that layer selected. Okay. Select that layer. There we go. Control C, Control V. There we go. Move that into place. You can barely see that line. I'm going to scale that down quite a bit. Let's go ahead and change its color. I'm going to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue, Saturation, and change it to, I actually say Colorize. Get the lightness down. And that'll be good about right there. Okay. So then let's zoom in there a little bit so we can see that line a little better. See that dark gray line. And just bring these up along that line we drew. Okay, and then where's the other half? Guess up here, right? Okay, so we'll just duplicate one of those as well. Same thing. Okay, so let's see what this is looking like. Let's go ahead and save. Actually, tell you what. These rivets are closing a seam together, so there should really be an actual seam on here. So let's do this. Let's grab our pen tool and let's draw a line along the bottom of those rivets that can throw a shadow. So we'll just kind of just, I guess it doesn't matter. Let's just click in here, just draw a box around them. Make sure we drag it all the way underneath them. Just wiggle the thing there. Click and drag all the way to the bottom. There we go. And then we'll say this one needs to have a drop shadow. And then we can control it. Zoom in here. Uh-oh. Hit the space bar on accident. Come from this direction. A little bit bigger. Set the opacity down. Maybe a little smaller. Okay. So something like that maybe. And hopefully... Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Where's it at? There we go. Let's drag this out. So we got that seam going all the way. I don't like this version of Photoshop. Okay. So now, let's grab that. If we can. Duplicate it. And rotate it. Actually, it's gonna change the drop shadow. So let's set that drop shadow to not use global light. So there we go. So now we can duplicate it, rotate it. We need to swap it to where it's going the opposite direction. So we'll, boom, there we go. Maybe. Okay, so now select this guy, move him a little further out. Okay, so that should look good. Let's go ahead and save this as a PSD. Go and save. And then we'll flatten it, Control-Shift-S, and save as JPEG. Save. Yes, I want to replace what's there. So we'll pop back into Blender and show our material, diffuse color. Actually, open. Clear that out. Open up Submarine texture map. There we go. And why isn't it showing anything? Well, I should be showing that. I guess maybe because we're in cycles. If we were in Blender Render, probably would show it. No. Huh. For some reason, it should be showing it. I don't know why it's not. Okay. Well, we have it created, so let's go ahead and create a material for it. Go back to Cycles Render, and set here, and we'll call this one. I'll get the space out so I can see where I'm typing. Call this one Submarine Material. Alright, so diffuse BSDF, yes. And come over here to our node editor. And let's make that full screen. Control up. Zoom in here so we can see what we're doing. And we need this image texture, which is already there somehow. And click and drag that over to color. And make sure we opened up Submarine texture map. Yes. So that should be it. We'll go to rendered view. And there we go. So we got our nice little submarine texture. So one thing, those rivets need to appear to be, you know, touchable. And actually that seam is along the wrong side, but we'll leave it as is for now. But we can also run that to a color hue saturation and set the saturation all the way to 0. Run the color to the color bar, and then run this color to the displacement, and it'll act as a normal map. So now you can see those rivets actually have texture to them. So good to go. Looking nice and snazzy. Okay, well, we're running on almost 40 minutes on this part 3, so I guess part 4 we will we might adjust those rivets, make them a little smaller, because those are pretty big. But we'll get in and start messing with the actual iris and how to control that, the main meat and bread of this whole tutorial set. So again, that's going to be it for part 3. Thanks for watching. Go ahead and save that, and we'll see you in part 4.